Is it okay if I rest my head? Will you be there when I need to lean? Is it here I can let my walls down? Right here, right now. Times seem harder than it's been, and days that seem hell sent change. The world that we're living in feels wild, but I find myself wanting to love again, only with the help of you, my friends. Is it okay if I rest my head? Will you be there when I need to lean? Is it here I can let my head down? Right here, right now. Even though times seem harder than it's been, and days that seem hell sent change. The world that we're living in feels wild, and I find myself wanting to love again, but only with the help of you, my friends. Is it okay if I rest my head? Will you be there when I need to lean? Is it here I can let my fear down? Right here, right now.
Thank you so much, Dina, and welcome everybody to our call. My name is Kazu, for those of you that I have not yet met. Um, this is a very short hour that we have ahead of us, but I wanted to welcome everyone into song and into beauty. Um, so much of the work of Fierce Vulnerability is about reminding us that beauty is possible even in the midst of collapse. And so much of it is about slowing down and being in relationship and creating beauty, even if we only have a short amount of time or even in the midst of the urgency. And so it really meant a lot that my friend and community member and auntie Tati to my child and beautiful musician Dina welcome you all. And so, yeah, song culture is a really important part of Fierce Vulnerability Network. So we wanted to welcome you with that. And there's a lot more that I could say to that, but I wanted to just thank you, Dina, for joining us and for opening the space. I wanted to turn it over to you to see if there's anything you wanted to share before you have to go.
Thank you so much for inviting me into this. And yeah, the power of song and sharing it. And that's an original song that I wrote in community for the community that we live in, Kazu. Just like, is this the place that I can finally feel safe? And I love that the communities that we're all a part of, including this one, we're all trying to be vulnerable with each other and deepening in relationship, and this world needs it. And yeah, so thank you for the offering to come and share my offering. And I hope this is a really beautiful meeting.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon.
See you.
I'll see you soon. And again, welcome to everyone who is joining us today. Yeah, I just feel really grounded by Dina's song. And before Dina's song, I'm in the East Bay on Ohlone land here, and it just gently started to rain. So I just started to notice the raindrops hitting the windows in our office, and actually the singing of some frogs outside. Live in a community with some bodies of water, so just really feeling supported by the rain and the frogs and the songs of humans and non-human friends. So um, yeah, really grateful to spend a little bit of time with you, sharing a little bit about the vision of this thing that we are all going to be experimenting with together. I have a few things that I want to share, starting by introducing my friend and my colleague and my partner, collaborator in building this whole thing. Michelle is someone who reached out to me. We hadn't met before. We actually still haven't met in person, actually, but reached out to me a while ago and said, "Hey, I'm building this platform called Kinvene. Is there any programs that you've been thinking about wanting to offer on a virtual platform like this?" And we hadn't even started to think about a new round of onboarding into the network. But since the release of my book, there's been so many people that have been asking about how to get involved. So it just really reminds me of the passage from The Alchemist. That's, something along the lines of when you're doing the work that you're meant to be doing in the world, the universe conspires to support you. So I felt like Michelle came into my life at the perfect time, and now here we are. So I wanted to pass the mic to Michelle to share a little bit about who you are and about the Convene platform.
Yeah, thanks, Kazu. And want to join in welcoming you all here. It's so wonderful to be together and amidst all the things happening here in our country and in the world, I want to say it's been so meaningful to co-create this program with Kazu, and it's brought me so much joy to see folks joining from all over the world for this call, signing up for the program, starting to group people into groups, people who know each other and want to deepen and experiment together, and people who have never met and are going to be grouped into pods together and experimenting together in their locations. So it's been really inspiring and hopeful, and to see why people are joining. So we're excited to be here with you all today and answer your questions. Just a short note about Convene, like Kazu said, I had just been, well, this platform has really been a vision for a very long time, for many years. And it was about a year ago that I reached out to Kazu with the invitation to collaborate on something, and fairly ambitious in terms of doing this whole translocal vision. But I think as many of us experienced over COVID, there was a big, growth in online programs, which was amazing in terms of accessibility and growing our global family and network. And more recently, myself and people that I'm connected to have felt a very strong longing to want to deepen relationships in the places that we live, and in our regions, while staying connected to these to this like global ecosystem. So that's, part of the vision of this translocal work is to deepen with the people who are in our communities that we live with, and to find others and discover our kin, that we might not even know are out there, and to get to practice together and grow together. And yeah, and we're in these big times right now. So more things will be continuing to happen. So who's out there? What gifts do we have? What resources can we exchange? How do we weave together? And I do hope that Convene is a place to support many of us in growing the larger ecosystem and our own ecosystems, and yeah, going in together internally and relationally, and as a greater community. So thank you for being along for the ride. I haven't produced a translocal experiment like this. So, it's going to be a big learning curve for those who join. And hopefully many of you will, but we're here to answer any of your questions and see what we can co-create and explore together. And also just want to say, agree with Kazu that there's been so much synchronicity with this program, and it really feels like it's been guiding us along the way. And we were going to start it in the fall, and then we pushed it, I think, to like November, December, and then we pushed it to March. And it's just like it has its own timing. And yeah, I mean, there's lots that I could say, but we have a limited time. So just really honored to be here and be a part of this.
Thank you, Michelle. So, again, I keep coming back to we are only together for an hour. And so much of this work is about slowing down and honoring relationship. So we're gonna actually put you all into some small groups just to spend a little bit of time getting to know a couple more people. I want to invite folks into the chat. If you are able to, just share one thing that is beautiful, something that is beautiful in your life, something beautiful that you heard somebody else share, something beautiful that has emerged in your mind, in your heart since those shares. Just want to invite you into the chat very briefly as we transition here into the rest of the content of our call. Hearing nature, kitties, definitely kitties, my life, working with plantkin, the woods, and the nature around me. Yeah, I just got to spend a weekend in the Sierra Nevadas and really feeling the support of the trees, hot coffee, supportive relationships, hen cat, connection with the human and beyond human world, the warm embrace of community, my teachers. My art is based on natural dyes, love dogs, meeting new folks here. Yeah, it's just so important for us to remember that there's so much life happening and so much beauty happening and so much connection happening. And sometimes it's easy to forget that when we turn on the news or scroll through our social media feeds. And it's these things that we need to ground in and to build from as we move forward in the world. Bad Bunny. So welcome again. We've had a couple of folks join us while most of you were in small groups again. Again, for those of you that I have not had the chance to meet, my name is Kazu, Kazu Haga, and really, really honored to be here. And yeah, to be part of this experiment with you all. I'm playing a particular role, but I'm in this experiment like anybody else. I'm not somebody who has any of the answers that we all need. And I've been very clear as I have been experimenting with fierce vulnerability that so much of the work of fierce vulnerability is about being with questions that are too big for us to have the answers to, and just being in the questions and the experiments of what it means to be alive in this moment, what it means to be doing healing work in this moment. And hopefully on this call, there will be some concrete answers to questions that you might have about what it means to participate in the program. I know many of you are already registered, and you may have questions. Some of you are here, a lot of you are here with questions that might help your discernment and whether or not to join the program. And so this is an informal call just to start to build community, start to see what questions are out there for folks, and to see if there are any answers, if not at least responses that might help you in your discernment as you move forward. I'll just share very briefly that, yeah, fierce vulnerability to me is about, as I said, asking the biggest questions of what does it mean to honor the sanctity of life in this moment when there's so much destruction going on? What does it mean to commit ourselves to healing and wholeness in the midst of so much fracture? What does it mean to build a grounded and regulated nervous system while we're on the brink of a mass extinction event? What does it mean to continue to honor life in the midst of so much death and destruction? And this 3-month Kinvene Kinship Lab is a place to experiment with some of these questions in an embodied way. Many of you know that I spent the last 25 years kind of going back and forth between frontline movement work and spiritual and healing work, and I've felt that those two things have always been very fractured. Um, and to the extent that there have been a lot of spaces over the last 10 years that have tried to merge those two things, it still, to me, feels like people are creating spaces for people who are in frontlines movement spaces to take a break from that to do healing work or to do spiritual work. And I think Fierce Vulnerability is about experimenting with, can we actually see frontlines work as healing work and as spiritual work? Um, and wanting to, like, desperately wanting to be in communities myself where we are doing deep healing work as the foundation through which we actually step out into the world and respond to some of the biggest crises that we are facing as a species. Um, and so, I've really seen Fierce Vulnerability as an ongoing experiment. And with any experiment where we don't know the answers, we just have to keep trying experiments over and over and over to see what sticks. And the 300 plus people who are already registered for this program worldwide are going to be part of these small teams that are going to be doing these experiments that are going to give birth to something that none of us individually can imagine. And so just really excited to be in that experimental place with you all. Like I said, the intention of this call is to really begin to answer questions that you all might have. And so if you have questions, I want to invite you to either put them into the chat or just raise your hand. And we're just going to go through as many as we're able to. And the ones that we're not able to, we'll try to save in the chat, and we'll try to figure out some other way to respond to them. But this is really a space for helping you all with discernment or any questions that you might have. So I think with that, I'm just going to kind of transition and dive in. We have some questions that people have submitted prior to joining this call. And so someone said that if I can't attend the live online sessions, can I still join the program? And the answer is absolutely yes. As I mentioned, we have over 300 people from all over the world, and there's people from different time zones. So all the calls will be recorded. And as you know, the intention is not just for us to get together in these live calls, but for everyone to be part of small pods that will hopefully meet in person. And if not in person, some of the groups may have to meet virtually over Zoom, but those are the only things that you really need to be in person and live for. But those are small teams of 3 to 7 people that are in your time zone. So hopefully you'll be able to find time to meet as part of that. Will we receive guidance on how to structure our pod meetings? And the answer is yes. When it comes time to get into your pods, you will receive information with like suggested agenda items and the flow for each meeting. Of course, each pod can take those as just that suggestion and take it in any direction you want. But you will receive as much guidance as you need to run your own pods. What are some examples of group projects? So yeah, as you know, in these pods, the invitation is not only for you to deepen in relationship, but to actually figure out an embodied experiment in fierce vulnerability. What does fierce vulnerability look like in action? And the Fierce Vulnerability Network has always been envisioned as a decentralized network. So the actual experiments are going to look drastically differently depending on your team and your pod. But some examples might be for you to hold a public grief ritual somewhere. In the Fierce Vulnerability Network and the workshops, for those of you who attended the workshops, you know that we do this exercise called the Vulnerability Rally, where we write like a vulnerable truth about ourselves that we might not otherwise share with people. And we just stand in silence holding that. So we might, in some groups might choose to do that in a public place. Some groups might choose to attend a rally or a demonstration that's being organized by another organization, but to go to that rally as a pod and to move through that rally in silence or by singing a gentle song, and to see how that might impact your nervous system and those around you. you might do an art installation as a form of guerrilla art making. So there's endless things that you could do, and you will have a lot of support later on in the program. The first part of the program, the first half of the program will be more of a book club. And then you'll be guided by other members of the Fierce Vulnerability Network with exercises in kind of learning to listen to your own intuition, learning to listen to the natural world, to see how you might be guided. There's more questions in the chat, but I did see a hand that went down, but I'm wondering if someone wants to come off of mute. The person that had their hand raised, if you can click your button again, we can invite you to unmute just so you're not hearing just my voice. And if other folks want to raise your hand and come off of mute, we'd love to hear other voices as well. Yeah, is it Mahes? I see your hand. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name.
No, that's fine, Kazu. My name is Mahesh. I am coming from Australia, from state of Victoria. Just my question is, and thank you for everything what you do, and the book is brilliant. Why I joined the course, because I'm not like active in the sense of a formal activist, working in the front line in the way it's I don't know how to put it, but in life we are all in the front line and working, and the book has really helped me with my relationships in family, in my workplaces, and in also actually for me to navigate through this time. And my work is very much I am influenced by Dr. Vanessa's hospicing modernity and work too. And this sits very well in parallel with that. And I'm wondering whether this course is for directly for people who are actively, formally call themselves as activists and working in the front line and protests and doing things that way, because I am not one of those people. I am actually, I'm a mother, I am a grandmother, and I work for an Indigenous organization, and I just want to be hospicing modernity and working through during this difficult time and being there for the younger people. I'm 61 and I'm really focused on growing up and showing up differently for our young people. So I'm just wanting to know how that sits here.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I have a love affair with Victoria, Melbourne. I've been to Melbourne a few times, and it's a really beautiful city. I think what the world needs in this moment are people who have never seen themselves as activists and have never been part of a direct action, have never designed a protest, to see that they have a critical role to play in responding to the current crises that we are facing. I think oftentimes people who have been doing direct action for 20, 30 years have too limited of a scope of understanding of what it means to be an activist, what it means to engage in direct action, and that actually limits our creativity. And we need so much creativity and out of the box thinking right now. And so I really welcome people who have not traditionally seen themselves as frontlines activists to reimagine what it means to be a frontlines activist. For some of us, that is going to mean engaging in like frontlines direct actions and civil disobedience, but doing so in a different way, infusing some spirit, some art, some beauty into it. And for others of us, it may look radically different. But the one thing that I do want to be clear about is that part of fierce vulnerability is about acknowledging that there are people who are being harmed by systems of power, by the climate crisis, by all of these things that are happening that are much larger than any of us as individuals, that will never attend this workshop, that will never come to a grief ritual that we hold in our own community spaces, that will never come to a healing circle. And there's a way in which if we don't do something to bring these rituals, to bring these healing spaces to the people who are directly being impacted, it feels like we're living in this delusion that says that, oh, as long as I do my own work and heal in my own communities, then the world will transform. And I think that belies the truth of interdependence, that we are deeply interdependent with the people that are getting deported by ICE right now, as well as the ICE officer. And if we ignore that conflict, then we are missing not only the places that need the healing the most, but the places that have the potential for the deepest healing. And so I do want to be clear that fierce vulnerability is an invitation to engage with the crises of the world, and step out of the comfort zone of working just in our own communities. But I think there's an infinite way that we can do that.
Thank you so much, Kazu. Thank you very much. And I really needed that clarification, I guess. And one thing, now that I've got this little opportunity to face you, I just want to say what really draws me is what you said about acting without acting and doing without doing. That's really very powerful. And I see fierce vulnerability as a practice to, connect with that way of acting and being. So thank you for that clarity. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much. I see it. Oh, so I think I have to.
Hey, thanks a lot for what you've been publishing and for providing this space. Really meaningful. My question is about centering activities, just centering of self, centering of the mind. There's obviously, as we all know, a whole lot of shit going on, and practices to come to center. And I've noticed in some of your podcasts and some of your work, meditation is a component. And I've been working with some of the Palm Village meditations, and I've been working with some meditations from Center for Action and Contemplation. But I'm wondering if there's any that you recommend. I'm trying to get more intentional about just my individual centering practices so I can have, I don't know, I guess more of me available to bring into community. And so just wondering what you recommend or think about those things. Thanks.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Meditation is definitely a big part of my life, and I have a feeling that a lot of fierce vulnerability pods will engage in some sort of contemplative practices. But also connection with nature is such a big part of our practice. One of our guest speakers in the program will be Frances Weller. I'm so honored to be part of this. And Frances, who's a grief worker, speaks a lot about the importance of doing grief work near large bodies of water or near like tall redwoods, because remembering that we are part of a planet that is so much bigger than us can be so deeply grounding. So we'll be engaging in some earth practices throughout our 3-month course as well. And we'll be sharing some resources and some handouts that have lots of other practices. Collective humming is another one. We're also going to be joined by MaMuse and my friend Lou Aya, who are some of the most amazing song leaders. And I mentioned, with Dina, that song culture is a really important part of the Fierce Vulnerability Network. So singing songs together, knowing that particular songs cultivate a certain energy and a grounding. So we'll be learning songs together. So we will be doing a lot of that kind of work, and I'm assuming sharing a lot of practices that you all can bring into the space as participants also. So yes.
Hi. Katsu, thank you so much for having this. I have to be honest with you. I received this invitation from a dear, loving friend, and I briefly read over everything and just kind of got a general idea and registered. So I would like to see if you could talk about what we do for those 3 months. I understand the group aspect of it and joining together, meeting and developing something that, would come from our meetings or our 3-month meetings. But I was wondering if you could talk about what would happen during our meetings together, like with you, and then the cost, because I also didn't understand that. I just saw a deposit, but I didn't see the cost. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Two great questions. So the kind of what we will actually be doing is, for the first half of the program, it'll be not a traditional book club, but we'll slowly collectively be going through different sections of the Fierce Vulnerability book. And throughout that time, we will be joined by guest speakers. So I mentioned Francis Weller, who is like such a source of wisdom around the importance of grief work. We'll be joined by Kaira Jewel Lingo, who I met when she was still Sister Jewel in the Plum Village tradition of Zen Buddhism, who will talk about the importance of spiritual practice in activist work. And we will also be joined by MaMuse, who have written some of the songs that have become the soundtrack to so many of our movements. We'll be talking about the importance of song culture. And those are all kind of themes throughout the book. So they'll help us kind of have a deeper sense of some of the content of the book. And then we're going to transition, and we'll be led in future sessions and the later sessions by members of the Fierce Vulnerability Network. And so my friend Vicky will lead us in a practice that helps us remember how to listen to the voices of the natural world for guidance. And when we think about like what's a fierce vulnerability action that we can design, trying to get out of our heads and thinking about it, but listening to the trees and the forests and the rivers for guidance on what we might need to be doing. We will be joined by Oren Jay Sofer, who is another meditation teacher, who will be teaching us a lot more emotional regulation practices, so that when we go out into the front lines or when we're having vulnerable conversations with our families, how do we stay grounded enough that we can remember that we belong to the person on the other side of the conflict? And we'll also be joined by my partner, Li Zhen, who is the co-director of a school called the School of Unusual Life Learning, or SOUL. And they teach a philosophy on life that really incorporates the sanctity of death, not as the end of life, but as a sacred part of the cycle of life. Like we're oftentimes taught that we are born and then life ends at death. But she'll be teaching us a worldview that teaches us that life is not the end of death. It is not in opposition that it is not the end of life. It is not the opposition to life, but it is a part of life. And if we are able to accept death as a sacred part of life, then how might it shift our understanding of what it means to move through this time when so much death is happening, including the death of large systems? And all of that will support you all, hopefully, in designing your embodied fierce vulnerability experiment in your teams. So the intention of the second half is to move through that. And then the hope is that some of you will join us in an additional optional 2-month curriculum that will be much more the nuts and bolts of what it means to be part of the Fierce Vulnerability Network. So the 3-month program that you're all considering is about what is fierce vulnerability. And then the optional 2-month program after that, which you'll hear a lot more about, we're currently designing it, will be about the nuts and bolts of what does it mean to be part of the Fierce Vulnerability Network and to continue your work even after the program is over. The cost, those of you who are familiar with my work know that for the last 15 years, I've been experimenting with something called the gift economy, which is an economic system that tries to model itself after natural ecosystems and looks at the way that natural ecosystems share and distribute resources and tries to think about an ecosystem around finances that, is modeled after that. And so to sign up for this course, there's a $25 registration fee, and that supports the Kinvene platform, which Michelle talked about. And none of the teachers will receive any income from that. Instead, we will offer each participant an opportunity to support the teachers at any amount that feels right to you. There's no amount that is too small, no amount that is too large. I oftentimes share a quote that comes from Marshall Rosenberg, who says that when giving is done out of pure joy, you can't tell who the giver is and who the recipient is. And I like to share an image of a young boy feeding a duck and ask the question, who's getting more joy out of that interaction, the boy or the duck? And so that's what I want to invite you all into as you start to get a sense of my work, as you start to get a sense of the work of Fierce Vulnerability, as you get a sense of the work of Francis Weller and Kaira Jewel Lingo and all these people. What would give you joy to support? And so if you pay the $25 registration fee and either don't want to or don't feel like you're able to pay anything else, you're more than welcome. You are so welcome to be part of it. And if you have some resources that you want to send our way so that we can continue to do the work that all of us are doing in the world, we will be grateful to accept that. And there'll be a lot of transparency throughout. We'll let you know throughout the 3 months how much money we've raised collectively and where all those funds are going. If you're on my mailing list, my personal mailing list, in the next week or so, my partner and I will be sharing our own personal finances. We have a practice of regularly sharing our personal finances with everyone on our mailing list. So it includes all the money that we made last year and every penny of how we spent it. So you have some transparency about what you will be supporting. So thank you. When do we do the additional donation is just a message that I just saw in the chat. Not until the program starts. I've gone to a lot of meditation retreats in the Vipassana tradition of Essen Goenka, and they won't even accept donations until you sat a silent 10-day meditation course, because until you sat a 10-day meditation course, you don't really have a sense of what you're giving to. And so it's hard for you to assess what might be the right amount for you to give. And so we're going to hold off on that and just don't think about money. Don't worry about money until we're in the program, and then you might start to have a sense of what might be a good amount for you to give. How often will the lab meet? Days and times? Those are all on the website. But we will be meeting for the first half of it. We will be meeting weekly, I believe. I should probably know this. And it switches between Tuesdays and Fridays. Yeah, Michelle, you want to?
Yeah, that's right. The first month is going to be weekly, Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday, Friday, and then it'll be every other week. And the first month is focused on, it'll be broken into the quarters of the book, and then it'll be focused on the embodiment of that work with the pods.
I'm just going to keep moving through some questions in the chat, and then Debbie, I see your hand as well. So yeah, the rhythm and the timeline of our like collective time virtually is what Michelle just shared. And then each pod will communicate with each other to figure out the times that work for your pod. Because pods will be ideally no larger than 7 people. And ideally they'll be with people who are local or at least in your time zone. We'll leave it up to you all to figure out when to meet. Our hope is that each pod can meet 5 times. Which sounds like a lot, but it's a lot to build the relationship, to design an action or an embodied experiment, to do the embodied experiment, that will be one of your meetings, and then to debrief from it. There's no mandatory, there's no one going to be checking in on you to see if you've met 5 times. And some groups might not be able to meet 5 times. And so we trust that each group will do what they can.
And
Debbie.
maybe, well,
No,
I'll just add a note on that, which is that when you sign up, we'll ask you to fill out a survey form that'll help us to group people regionally. And on that form, we ask for your preferences on meeting. So once we start and group people into the pods, which will be after the program begins, we'll email you with the folks that you're grouped with, and hopefully that'll give you a head start on, what people have put down in terms of their preferences for meeting. But then, the pods will have to organize that themselves. Yeah.
And so, another friendly reminder that if you are signing up and you have a couple of friends, community members in mind that you want to go through this program with, we really want to encourage that, because if you have pre-existing relationships, it makes that work that much easier.
Hi, this sounds so exciting to me, but I have a lot of fears around it, that I'm not enough, that I don't know enough, that I can't grow enough, you know what I mean, to participate. Is there space for me just to be who and how I am and participate as I'm able and grow into it? Does that, some of my low self-esteem is showing up, and I'm being vulnerable with it with you.
Thank you so much for sharing that in such a public space. I hope you see some of the hearts coming your way. Literally before this call, I was working with my therapist about some of my imposter syndrome and about how I'm not healed enough to be leading this work and who am I. And so I hope there's space for me in this program. And I really do trust that there will be as much space for me as there will be for you. And I really just want to honor and thank you for sharing that vulnerability. And just curious how that lands for you and what it feels like to share that in such a large space here.
It scares me. And I think it scares me on that edge of that it's drawing me to this, and it's probably would be something that would be really important for me to step up and do
That's right.
and open myself to.
Thank you. And I saw a lot of people sending hearts your way, but I'm also wondering, like, how many people actually resonate with that and have some of those same fears, just by a show of hands? And yeah, and Debbie, I just want you to look at all the hands and the hearts across the screen that right there with you. There was also a question in the chat. If you haven't already received the book, well, when you register for the program, you'll receive a code for a 30% discount if you order directly through the publisher, which is a nonprofit Buddhist mission-driven publisher. And you can get the physical book or the ebook. I think in early March, I forgot the exact date, but a couple of weeks before the program starts, the audiobook is going to come out right in time. So if people want the audiobook, you'll be able to purchase that. Unfortunately, publishing industry stuff, the audiobook is published by someone who's not the actual publisher, so there's not going to be a discount for that, but the audiobook will be available as well.
And I think that's on March 10th. And as somebody put in the chat, Libro.fm is a great resource for audiobooks that supports independent bookstores.
Thank you. Couple more questions in the chat. Even if we meet online, actions require a meeting in person? No. There's likely no one else within 100 kilometers of me. Yeah, so this is one of the experiments, right? We don't know exactly how all of it is going to work. Maybe there are people within 100 kilometers of you, especially if you invite them. But if not, we're actually considering pairing people who are in like super rural areas in a pod of people who are in rural areas alone or only with a group of 1 or 2 people to see what kind of creative stuff you can come up with. And so it's very possible, perhaps even likely, that the actual embodied experiments that some pods are going to come up with are not going to be all of you going out into the world together in person. And I can't wait to see what you all come up with. About when should we expect to hear about the folks in our pod? Michelle responded to that in the chat. Registration closes on April 1st, 1 week into the program, and then we'll talk about, we'll take about a week to finalize groups. I just want to give it up to Michelle for taking the lead in the complex matrix of putting what will probably be 400 or 500 people from every corner of the world into these pods. So that will be a lot of work and will take some time, but hopefully within 2-3 weeks into the program, you'll start to hear about who's in your pod.
Yeah. Yeah, we're already starting to, organize folks just by region to get a sense of, like once there's 3 people, that officially creates a pod. So we're just trying to see like, okay, what areas, what regions might need a little more boost and, outreach for those pods to form, which ones are forming, and just get a head start before that time comes that we actually need to finalize them.
I have just a couple more minutes, so I want to touch on a couple more questions. And then if your question wasn't answered, please enter them into the chat now, and I'll save the chat and respond to them and make sure it gets to you all. Someone says they're from Mumbai, but going to be traveling in the United States for some time for the majority of the program. What would be my local network? I think I actually want to leave that up to you to see what makes sense for you. My gut says you may want to try to be in a pod with people in India. I have some friends in Mumbai that I think are going to apply, just so you have community once the program ends, because part of our hope is that this program helps to build local community that can continue to support people even after the program ends. But we'll really ultimately leave that up to you. You can tell us in the survey what works best for you. Yes, definitely aware that certain disabilities might also preclude meeting in person or doing an action in person. So really want to invite each pod to really think about what are ways that you can engage in fierce vulnerability that creates as much access as possible. And so again, there's no wrong way to do fierce vulnerability. So thank you for that. And maybe we'll do one more question. Do you ever pod people together who are not in the same location, different countries perhaps? We're really prioritizing local connections. I think in this digital world with social media and Zoom, there are a lot of gifts that gives us, like Michelle said, and we lose something in not being able to see people face to face. So again, of course, there's going to be exceptions to every rule. People may have deep relationships with people on the other side of the world that they want to be in a pod in. You can let us know if that's the case, and we'll do our best to honor everyone's requests. But our invitation is to try to find pods that you can be with that are in your region. And again, like none of this is mandated. So we are coming up on time. And so I really wish we could be with you all for more. I mean, we will be with you all for much more time as the program starts. I will be saving the questions that are in the chat and responding to them and getting them out to you all. We might also start an online forum where you all can start to connect with each other a little bit before the program starts. But yeah, just wanting to thank all of you for taking this time. And we're just so grateful that you have an interest in this. And I can't wait to be with you. Michelle, do you have closing announcements or thoughts?
Yeah, there's some questions we didn't get to. So please feel free to email us at support@kinvene.co. KINVENE.co. If you have questions about your pods, your location, anything like that, just shoot us an email. And yeah, looking forward to the experiment and being together on this journey for those who join us. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining. Cannot wait to be in the experiment with you all. Thank you for saying yes.
Yeah.
Rest well. We'll see you soon. Thank you all. Feel free to keep entering questions into the chat as you leave if you have any more.